Welcome back to another episode of Tips and Tricks, a series where I give a quick rundown of specific but sometimes related ideas in design. This video is on contrast, lines of motion, and facial wedges in character design and animation. These topics are related somewhat, so I thought I'd group them together. In short, contrast is anything that stands out because it's different to that which surrounds it. Our brains are great at establishing patterns quickly, and when those patterns are changed or seen as immediately different, our eyes will subconsciously move to that aspect first. Learning about contrast is useful for both character design, animation, and cinematography, as there are a lot of shared elements between them all. It's also useful to combine different types of contrast together so that you can really emphasize an aspect or part of a character to better convey their playstyle or personality. Contrast is a tool that can be used in nearly every aspect for character design, so you need to break it down to better understand it. Contrast is very good at drawing your eye to a specific part or parts of a character. You can get away with about a max of 3 focuses on a character, plus the face, before the character gets too visually demanding and overloading. Humans do have a bit of a limit when it comes to looking at detail. If it's too much, our brains get a bit tired and we want to look away. Giving characters spots on them that are less visually detailed or attention-grabbing compared to other areas will give a viewer spots to rest their vision so they don't feel like their eyes are getting overworked. It's like looking at a kaleidoscope for an extended period of time. You get tired and you want to look away. Shapes or forms that are larger than anything near it will draw attention first. Things physically separated from a core group will also draw attention first. Also within a shot composition, if something small is surrounded by everything that's quite large, the small thing will typically stand out. This is something to note in regards to a character's shapes if seen from a silhouette. It'll be a defining feature as well as grab attention quickly if made quite large. A great example is Reinhardt from Overwatch. The end of his hammer is physically far removed from the core of his body, and his shoulder pads are massive to double down on giving him a very heroic silhouette. You do want to be careful when it comes to the progression of sizes on a character, especially if it's a limb. You don't really want a large size difference that happens over a really short distance. It can make the form look structurally weak, unless it's a character holding an object or something. Then you can get away with a larger size difference because it's technically 2 different bodies interacting with each other. If it's one part of the body connecting to another, it should change size like a slide whistle, if that makes sense. It should be a bit of a gradual change, you know? It shouldn't be like a hard stop. Areas or colors that have the brightest or most saturated colors will grab attention first. Sometimes if too many colors on a character are really bright and attention-grabby, like I mentioned earlier, it can be a bit much on the eyes, and you likely may need to incorporate some darker colors to balance it out. This even works with shot composition. Characters that have the brightest lighting on them will stand out first and be the focus. Like I've mentioned in other videos, people and characters with darker complexions work quite well with saturated colors as their skin tone naturally contrasts the colors they wear. Even in small amounts, the brightest color will grab the most amount of attention, so it can still be a tertiary color that provides the most contrast, and still be the focus. Areas that have the most visual complexity through the density of lines and detail will grab attention first. When there's a lot going on in a specific area, we understand that and we want to look over there to see what's going on. You can still have details and lines in other areas, but you typically have to make the lines closer in value to each other, so on a first glance, the details blend together in those spots. So when you squint, the focus isn't pulled away from the important parts. Again, we can look at Reinhardt to see how this was done with some of his internal detail. Another aspect of lines that grab attention are tangents. Tangents are when an established path or line of motion is interrupted midway by a different near perpendicular line. It's basically a contrast in angle, and it's essentially the breaking of a pattern of a flat line. If we look at Zarya, her torso and legs have quite a few vertical lines, but her weightlifting belt is basically one large flat line that breaks that pattern. Her gloves start off with this flat line that goes into a straight line that points you to her gun. The same goes for her boots. The contrast of the lines draw your attention to these aspects of her design, her weightlifting belt, her boots, and her gun. As well as the boots have more detail in a smaller area compared to her chest, for instance. So again, we can kind of emphasize those aspects of her with all that contrast. Another design from Overwatch that makes use of different aspects of contrast is Ramatra. His staff is emphasized because of its size and the brightness of its color. His chest is emphasized because of the complexity of the shapes in it and the brightness of the metal. Those areas need to be focused on because it doubles down on his playstyle. He's pretty closely associated with necromancy, summoning, and a shepherd. Having his wizard staff / shepherd's crook and his ribcage based chest be the focuses makes sense to convey these ideas like I mentioned. Another thing that can draw attention is asymmetry. It's another way to make something stand out and break a pattern. Typically something that uses one of the other forms of contrast plus being asymmetrical will make it stand out quite heavily, such as Junker Queen's axe sitting angled on her back so that part of the axe head forms a large asymmetrical shape with her silhouette. In animation, which we'll start talking about now, asymmetry happens with normal body movements. Your hands don't move at the same speed all the time, your feet don't always land in sync from a jump. Sometimes it does happen in real life, but this matter, known as twinning, is typically avoided in animation. Another thing is that most facial expressions aren't symmetrical. Sometimes one of your mouth corners is in a different spot than another, sometimes your eyes blink out of sync. Your eyebrows are usually not doing the same thing either. Like with character design, animation and cinematography make use of contrast frequently, especially in terms of shot composition and lighting. Characters that have the brightest light on them will grab your attention first, as well as characters that are removed from a greater mass will also stand out. But animation is not completely still, unlike concept art, so motion can also be another form of contrast. Something moving faster and over greater distance compared to things around it will grab attention first. Someone gesturing heavily with their hands when put beside someone listening but not moving will grab attention first. But the opposite can also happen. If someone is surrounded by other fast-moving characters but is still themselves, they'll stand out because they've broken a pattern once again. Lines of motion are lines on a character that can direct you at something. Much like how an arrow can point you in a direction, a simple line can provide a path for a viewer's eye to follow. But like I've mentioned with shape psychology, the type of line will leave a different impression depending on the shape. In Devil May Cry 4 and 5, Dante has a jacket that has lines on it that point you to his shoulders. He then has these very soft and circular-looking patterns on the top of the jacket to give him a less outwardly intimidating look compared to the more angular designs found on his brother's jacket. Like I also mentioned earlier, Ramatra's ribs from Overwatch when combined with his scarf have these lines that flow and point to the center of his chest. They all end up leading to his sternum that's colored purple, which the color purple is a necessary emphasis on him, because we do frequently associate purple with corruption and magic. Also, when it comes to noticeable lines of motion on a cast of characters, you should keep it varied. If one character has an angled bandolier across their chest, you probably want to avoid putting a similar design on a different character. They should be pretty distinct from each other. Like lines of motion, facial wedges are useful for posing and animation to help direct a viewer's attention. By opening up one side of the face in the direction you want the audience to look, you end up putting this area to move or breathe in, which preemptively readies an audience to look in a direction, or we kind of understand that attention should be going to that side of a screen. This is done by adjusting the eyebrows, eyelids, and mouth corners to open up in one direction. You can even rotate the jaw sideways a bit if you want to push it even further. It doesn't need to be done in each shot or pose as other artists may pick up on it, but it is very useful to know when it comes to directing attention to one part of a screen, especially if it's in a very quick shot. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed this video. As one final question, just to get some engagement going, if you guys ever played Destiny, do you remember the first exotic weapon you ever got or exotic armor piece that you have like a pretty strong emotional connection to? For me, in Destiny 1, my first exotic was the Last Word. I got it dropped from a legendary engram from Big Rahul. I was pretty excited about that. I've got fond memories of that gun. With that, take care.